Khamzat Chimaev, a real threat to Adesanya's reign, or just another hype train? There is a lot of talk and hype around Khamzat Chimaev ever since he entered the octagon in 2020. It's one thing to have an outstanding UFC debut fight, like scoring a victory by a flashing knockout or submitting someone in the first round. But it's a whole different level to completely demolish and destroy two of your first opponents in less than 10 days, and with that, breaking the record for quickest turnaround between UFC wins in the modern era. That was the case with the new rising prospect, Khamzat Chimaev. His intimidating look is a story for itself. The bald head, a beard that reminds of an Assyro-Babylonian warrior, and the scar on his lips, like a lion who fought to protect his pride. After two other spectacular performances, like knocking out Gerald Meerschaert and submitting Li Jingliang, both of them in the first round, many fighters and journalists started to mix Khamzat in the title picture. But then, the real question would be, does Khamzat Chimaev really possess what it takes to dethrone the reigning undisputed UFC middleweight champion Israel Adesanya? Or will this be just another hype train soon to be derailed? Clash of styles. If this fight ever happens, and the way things are going, it looks like it would be inevitable to happen in the future. Then, it will be another classic striker versus a wrestler match. Israel Adesanya has a kickboxing record of 75-5, which makes him be highly regarded as one of the best strikers in UFC history. He has an incredible ability to control the distance and pick his opponents apart with his jabs and kicks, before they rush in frustration towards him, desperate to close the distance only to get hurt or knocked out. On the other hand, Khamzat Chimaev has an undefeated record of 24-0 in freestyle wrestling. He likes to take the opponents to the ground, control the fight there with constant pressure and overwhelming ground and pound, that so far nobody was able to prevail. He has beaten all of his MMA opponents by stoppage, either by knockout or submission. Taking all this into consideration, it would be interesting to see which of these fighters would implement his game plan better, and whose fighting style will come to be superior over the other. Which leads to the question, is Khamzat Chimaev a real threat to Adesanya, and the man who possesses what it takes to possibly dethrone the middleweight king? The short answer is yes. By yes, it doesn't necessarily mean that he can beat Adesanya easily, but rather that he's an opponent who has the style to compete and outfight the champion. As we all know, Adesanya is undefeated at middleweight, and his only loss is at light heavyweight by the former champion Jan Blachowicz. The crucial moments in that fight that led Adesanya 0 to go were Jan's takedowns and control on the ground. Not only that, but even though Izzy is undefeated at middleweight, the rounds that he lost were by fighters like Vettori and Whitaker. When they took him to the ground, did some ground and pound, and controlled the fight there. Adesanya is arguably the best striker in the whole UFC, and even though Khamzat has shown that his striking skills are not to be underestimated, still, he doesn't really stand a chance on the feet against someone like Izzy, who is the bigger, taller man in that fight. Not only that, but Adesanya has proved to be very efficient in his defensive wrestling. If this fight ever happens, it won't be the first time that Izzy would fight a wrestler. He fought elite wrestlers like Yoel Romero, who has a silver medal in the Olympics in wrestling. He also beat Derek Brunson easily, a great wrestler and a fighter whose wrestling is the main weapon in each of his fights. And nevertheless, Marvin Vettori, who has an outstanding takedowns and control on the ground. Those guys are legit grapplers and big middleweights. If they didn't manage to solve the easy puzzle, then will Khamzat be able to bring something to the table that would surprise the champ? According to the former double UFC champion Henry Cejudo, yes. On the Triple C and the Schmo show, he said that if he turns into a gambler and has to put money on someone, that would be betting on Khamzat beating Adesanya. This is the reason why. Because he can take him down, and he has that Khabib control, said the Triple C. On the other hand, according to Daniel Cormier, who is also one of the best in the sport, a former double champion and an Olympic wrestler, this won't be an easy fight for Khamzat, as Cejudo thinks. He believes that Khamzat's style is not the most ideal style for beating the champ. He believes that Khamzat is going to rush, and him rushing into Izzy would get him in trouble. Cormier also mentioned the size factor, which clearly favors Adesanya, who, as said before, is the bigger man in that fight. However, this won't be the first time that Khamzat would fight a real middleweight. His UFC debut was at middleweight against John Phillips, and his fight against Gerald Meerschaert was also at 185 pounds. Not only that, but his most recent wrestling match against one of the best grapplers at middleweight, Jack Hermanson, he out-wrestlered the Joker and made it look like he doesn't even belong there with him. And we're talking about an elite grappler whose ground and pound is on another level. This proves that size won't be that huge of a factor, and Khamzat has proven on more than one occasion that he can compete with bigger guys.
Israel Adesanya and Khamzat Chimaev. Now, people have started to think that Chimaev is the worst possible matchup for Israel Adesanya, even though he's a weight below and Jared Cannonier is the #1 contender. I disagree. And not only do I disagree, I kind of disagree in an emphatic way. Why? Do I believe there's a world where Khamzat Chimaev beats Israel Adesanya? Possibly. Do I believe that, as Henry Cejudo said, it's an easy fight? Not at all. Now let me tell you why. It's in the matchup. Izzy is one of those guys that is tremendously talented. He's next level striker. He is in phenomenal shape. Dude is an absolute star at this point. He's one of the biggest stars the UFC has today and one of the biggest stars that we've ever seen. The one thing about Adesanya, though, is that he is probably the highest caliber counter striker that we have seen inside of the octagon. Why does that apply to a fight with Chimaev? If we look at the Gerald Meerschaert fight, we look at the fight in Abu Dhabi, the 3 fights in Abu Dhabi, we look at the Li Jingliang fight, the first thing Khamzat does is he pressures. He doesn't know any other way. The first thing I did was I pressured. First thing Cain Velasquez did was pressure. First thing Khabib did was pressure. With all that being said, I think Israel Adesanya is a nightmare matchup for every single one of us. Why? Because of that pressure. Because that pressure leads to you falling into traps that Adesanya sets so beautifully. Khamzat Chimaev is an absolute dog. But I don't know if it's an absolute dog that's going to beat Adesanya. Does Khamzat have a chance at some point? Yes, I agree. Does Khamzat have a chance today? I don't know.
At the end of the day, it all goes to which fighter will implement his fighting style better. If Adesanya manages to keep the distance, defend the takedowns in the earlier rounds, and keep the fight standing, then Khamzat's hype train will surely be derailed. But if Khamzat does what he does best, managing to take the fight to the ground early, control easy there, make him tired and capitalize on his tiredness, then this might be a long night for the champ. And in that case, we will be witnessing history, a superstar in the making, and a new undisputed king in the middleweight division.